going into the draft, how would you go ahead and rank the Cowboys position groups by need? And I wonder how high you would put corner given the recent developments with Kelvin Joseph.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've gone back and forth in my mind with this one a little bit. I think the Cowboys are in a decent spot. You don't really have, outside of Diggs, you don't really have any corner that you just love or you feel like, man, the future for this guy could just be insanely awesome.
Right.
But you got some veteran bodies there.
They've got some okay depth at the position, at least for this year.
Yeah, right, for this year. Big picture, yeah, corner is a pretty big need because how long's Anthony Brown going to be here? How long's Jordan Lewis going to be here? What are you actually going to get from Nashawn Wright in reality? And how long's Kelvin Joseph going to be here now? So, big picture, corner is a massive need because of just kind of where they're at from a roster standpoint and also the importance of that position. It's always a relative need because of how important the position is. But for this year right now, I do think you can get by with kind of what you have. Even if Kelvin Joseph is suspended for 4 or 6 or 8 games, whatever it ends up being, I think you can manage. I still have offensive line as the single most important need.
Yes.
And I think most people probably would and should because that's when your whole season collapsed on you. The offense sputtered. You couldn't run the ball, even if there was nobody in the box. It's just a terrible situation. You don't protect Dak. The offensive line's the guaranteed number one.
Yeah.
And then I think there's good arguments after that. Do you find the pass rush to be the second most? Where you're like, man, I know we got Dante Fowler, and of course we got Tank, and we have Chauncey Golston and Dorrance, and some of these young guys.
Even
that maybe
D-tackle. I mean, I know some people are excited about, Neville Gallimore and Osa Odighizuwa, but I mean, maybe. But I mean, I still think anywhere up and down the defensive line, you can't have enough defensive linemen, and before you know it, Neville Gallimore is going into year 3 already.
Yeah.
He's going to be up for his second contract. Is that a guy that, depending on what the market dictates, will you be able to retain him? So that's a guy you kind of got to be looking at restocking as well, that pipeline.
Yeah, I think I'm kind of about the trenches right now. I think it was super alarming the way that you were losing at the end of the season, but especially the way you lost in that playoff game to San Francisco. It was eye-opening where you just got bullied on both sides of the ball. And I understand that most teams in the NFL these days aren't built the same way that the Niners are, where it's just we can bully you on both sides. We're gonna run the ball and we're gonna dominate you in the trenches all game, but you can't just be completely susceptible to that because I think most people would feel like, man, on paper, the Cowboys should have been the better team. You had the better quarterback. You had star power kind of all over the place, but the kryptonite was the physicality. And so, and there's more to it. There's some nuance to it where like Kyle Shanahan and the offensive genius that he is compared to what you have in Kellen Moore it's far and away different. But I mean, still, when you get down to the nitty gritty, they just bullied you. And so to me, I think I'm going trenches on both sides of the ball first and foremost, and then I would take it over to receiver.
Right.
And then I'd probably get to corner.
What about linebacker? Yeah.
I mean,
would you go linebacker over receiver or receiver over linebacker?
I'm going receiver over linebacker because I feel like, man, if I can get one, I obviously still have Micah. I'm hopeful about Jabril Cox coming back, and maybe that's a second half of the season Jabril Cox that you start to really see.
I'm pretty excited about Jabril Cox.
Yeah, I am too, but there's a legit question mark there. I think if Jabril Cox wasn't coming off the injury, I'd have very little concern about the linebacker because I'm like, man, you got some guys here. I guess it's
the injuries coming off of,
right?
And just now it's one of those injuries where 10 to 15 years ago we were super scared about it.
Yeah.
Now it's just such a common injury and modern, and specifically the surgery for that injury. It seems like guys are just naturally able to come back, and there's no issues from it. Yeah, but I'm confident in it. I just don't have much concern.
But like really, when you think about the wide receiver room right now, there's some genuine concern. Because it's CeeDee Lamb,
especially early in the season,
right? And dude, I know we're talking about maybe it's the first 2 or 3 games with Michael Gallup missing. But what if it's the first 4 to 6 games? And I still don't want to be super short-sighted with it and think, wow, the first 4 to 6 games of the season matters more than anything, and you got to draft a wide receiver in round 1. I'm not saying that.
Right, and I got into a little Twitter battle with somebody about that. It's like, hey, it doesn't mean, we've got to take a guy at 24. just because we're worried about Michael Gallup missing the first month. You don't take a dude that's going to be a 5-year player for you just because you're worried about a starter for 4 weeks of your season this year. But it is certainly a conversation to be had.
So for me, the wide receiver room, after O-line, D-line, it's going to go to wide receiver. And then I think you could even make the argument, and it's looking ahead a little bit because you do have Dalton Schultz right now, but like the tight end position.
And it seems like they're doing a lot of homework on, like they're coming away with a tight end in this draft, and
hopefully in rounds 3 or 4, maybe.
Yeah, most of the tight ends that they've had coming in, it seems like 3rd or 4th round.
Yeah, and you can get some guys that, hey, when you look up in a year or two, you're feeling really, really good about. So it's more of a long-term investment than it is a, hey, you're gonna super help us this year. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they get an athletic guy, and in the role they carve out for him, he can make some really big plays for you in year 1. But I think tight end's another one of those positions that as you look ahead, like, are they going to get a long-term deal done with Dalton Schultz? And if not, is this just going to be play on the tag and let him walk away, and now where you left at tight end? So there's plenty of ways to look at it, but it's for sure O-line, D-line for me to start. And then it's like the top 3, O-line, D-line, wide receiver. And I can understand if you swap D-line for wide receiver. I get that. But that's where my needs are.
I agree. Offensive line, specifically guard 1, tackle 2, and then, absolutely, I'd go defensive line. I'm all about, you win at the line of scrimmage in the NFL. That's where you should always be focusing your attention, and that's what's most important. It is interesting that we've been talking about this now, and safety has been brought up. And I think that's the first time in how many years that we haven't been saying, like, gosh, you've got to get a safety. And we haven't been talking about safeties, even knowing that this team's not going to draft one early in the draft. But we haven't just been saying, like, gosh, I wish they would address this and take a guy in round 1 or round 2. Yeah, but you got to feel good about Malik Hooker and Jaron Kearse.
Oh, I feel incredible about Jaron Kearse. I feel pretty good about Malik Hooker. And you still have Donovan Wilson. So, I mean, you got some guys. So I'm not as concerned about safety, and I'm just conditioned now to understand they're not going to really care about it. So I'm not going to get my hopes up about them taking a kick-ass safety in the first 2 rounds because they're just not going to do it. And especially this year when they paid Jaron Kearse, though it wasn't crazy money, they still paid him. And they got Malik Hooker, they got Donovan Wilson. I think they're fine there.
The other positions that we didn't discuss, punter, they got Brian Anger. Kicker, I think they might draft a kicker. On day 3.
Definitely. It's not sexy, but
they probably will take one of these kickers day 3, and there's a couple of local guys to look at. And then next year, I think it's the year that they address running back. There's tons coming out. I don't know that they take one in this year's draft. I think next year you're going to have your pick of a ton of studs when Zeke probably is no longer a Dallas Cowboy. And I wonder what happens if they end up taking a flyer like they have with a Cooper Rush or a Ben DiNucci or somebody late in the draft at one of these quarterbacks. Not that there's any quarterback I really like in this year's class, but Mike McCarthy does like to do that. And he did that in Green Bay, where day 3 just kind of drafts one of these developmental dudes to just kind of groom and have as a guy, as maybe as a quarterback 3. As they just have behind Dak Prescott as potentially their quarterback 2. And Ben DiNucci, I don't know if he's going to end up working out or not. Doesn't seem like he is. But right now, Cooper Rush is the backup, and they haven't done anything else behind Dak Prescott.